The Sure Investing Podcast, investments and strategies to help you safely compound your wealth over the long run. The Sure Investing Podcast is hosted by Nick McCullum and supported by Sure Dividend, an investment newsletter provider aimed at helping people invest better through low-cost, long-term positions in individual securities. All opinions expressed by Nick and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Sure Dividend. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. For more information about Sure Dividend and the research our firm provides, go to www.suredividend.com/research. Today's conversation is with Sean Iddings, the co-author of the book Intelligent Fanatics, How Great Leaders Build Sustainable Businesses. Sean's research is focused on finding leaders, both in business and other domains, who have achieved remarkable success through unconventional methods. Sean and his co-author Ian Castle have now published a second book called Intelligent Fanatics, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. They also write extensively about their research at www.intelligentfanatics.com. Outside of his work with the Intelligent Fanatics research team, Sean is also the founder of Unconventional Capital Wisdom, a registered investment advisor in New York State seeking to invest in high-quality microcap companies led by Intelligent Fanatics. In this episode, we discuss a number of interesting concepts that are applicable to both business and general life, including how to identify intelligent fanatics, what investors should do when an intelligent fanatic leaves the company they founded, and how to take the principles used by intelligent fanatics to drive personal growth. Please enjoy this wide-ranging discussion with Sean Iddings. First of all, thanks for taking some time to speak with us today. I thought a great way for us to get started would just be to dig in and ask you directly what is an intelligent fanatic and why so much interest in them from you and your team.
Well, an intelligent fanatic, Charlie Munger talked about them, and he said, occasionally you'll find an individual who's so talented that he or she can do things that ordinary skilled mortals can't. Of course, he named these people intelligent fanatics. And for me, I didn't really think that was a nuanced enough definition of who these people were and how they become what they become, that true master. And so for me, I've been trying to figure out as a businessman and investor, how can I myself become one? And I think I have a background in music, and that's given me a really good idea. You've probably heard Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hour rule. You might have heard or read Peak by Anders Ericsson and how they talk about all of that deliberate preparation going into a skill to raise somebody's skill level from a novice to amateur to advanced and then to a master. And so for me, I'm trying to figure out how can I myself become a master of business and investing. And so that's really how I think we can start looking at it. And if you step back and see, well, there's masters in many fields. We can start taking in great ideas, lessons, stories, and philosophies from business, from investing, from art, from music, and from many different areas, and then apply them to how we can become, like I said, adapt them to become a better businessman or investor or person at life.
So that was super broad, and I'm surprised and interested to hear that you study people from outside the business world as well.
Correct.
On a general basis, what are the personality traits of an intelligent fanatic?
Well, the personality traits can be wide and ranging, and especially if you look at any intelligent fanatic in any field, it ranges. It's a wide spectrum, I would say. And so that's one thing that we don't really focus too much of our attention on, because what I try to do, at least, and I know Ian's trying to do as well, he's my partner with Intelligent Fanatics, he and we're trying to look at it, what are the best positive attributes we can take from greatness in any field. And then I like to think of it as an analogy with a huge pot of gumbo, where a gumbo isn't good if you have one or two ingredients. You need a wide variety. You need shrimp. You need onions. You need this, that, and another. You need lots of different spices. And so we think of that wide variety of positive attributes from a wide variety of obscure, highly successful individuals in any field, put them into our huge pot of gumbo. We stir it around with our proper reflection, and then we add our own unique spice to that pot, and then you take a scoop of that, and you know what? It's going to be really good tasting pot of gumbo, and it'll be truly uniquely yourself. So there's some characteristics and traits that might be a little similar. We talk about in our first book, focus, and some other general characteristics. But really what we're trying to do is we're trying to hone in on the positive attributes of Intelligent Fanatics from a variety of fields and, throw away some of their bad habits. I go back to music, and I have a background in music where my heroes, especially the blues and rock players, guitar players, because I'm specifically a guitarist, a lot of them were druggies. And so there's a lot of quality things you can take from them, but there's a lot of bad things as well. So it's trying to take those quality attributes, lessons, stories, and philosophies and add them into our head and make a unique, stir on that, and then find out our own true, unique voice and true mastery that we can apply to business, investing, and wherever else in our lives.
From the time I've spent reading your work and your book, I agree with you that there's definitely not a certain set of personality traits that characterize an intelligent fanatic. It's more results-based. So these people are identified by their ability to do things that normal people can't. But like you said in your book and in your comments earlier, interestingly enough, there are things that ring true among the different intelligent fanatics that you studied. So probably the best way for our listeners to get a sense of what these people are like is maybe for you to discuss a few intelligent fanatics that you've studied, maybe in your book or on your website or otherwise.
Well, I think a good thing to do that, I'll draw from a wide different variety of fields. And so take, for instance, like Wayne Gretzky. How did he know where the puck was going before other players? And, like how did Larry Bird, the Boston Celtics, and General George S. Patton, like how did both of them anticipate action before it actually happened? Or again, coming from my background in music, specifically jazz, you have jazz pianist Herbie Hancock, and how does he have the ability to improvise in the moment? And so what we see it all comes down to is that highly skilled level that all these people attain, all right? And so the true masters, these intelligent fanatics in any field, so they have some of those common traits, characteristics, and some other things that they do, if we're speaking about the business operational standpoint, that, focus on culture, focus on people. But for them to make the quality decisions, they deliberately practice their craft so much that it becomes second nature. And, there's a gentleman who described a term in 1970. His name was Noel Birch, and he described it as unconscious competence. So one thing that we firmly believe is that really if we become an intelligent fanatic ourselves, to internalize these stories, lessons, and philosophies to the point where it becomes truly ours, as if we experienced it ourselves, then it's just applying that to our daily lives, to our business endeavors, to our investing endeavors, and then we'll start to gravitate towards these individuals. And so you might ask, well, what are some of those traits? How can we build up a pattern recognition for say like intelligent fanatics focus on culture or something like that? Well, I'd say, again, going back to becoming a fanatic ourselves, and then you start to naturally gravitate toward these individuals. So I'll give you a great example. So Warren Buffett, I'm sure many people are familiar that he brought on Ajit Jain to run the reinsurance operation. Now, the great thing, Nick, is this. Now, Ajit, he had no experience in the insurance business. Zero. And what Warren said in his biography, Snowball, is he said that, I just like the guy. Now, that's just an amazing thing for me, at least, is that a lot of these guys, women, whoever, all these intelligent fanatics, they have, they're masters at their craft, and they are intelligent fanatics themselves, so they just naturally look for people who have the same high standards, the same potential. They can see themselves in these other individuals. So when Warren saw Ajit, who came from McKinsey, the consulting firm, he could just see in his eyes that Warren Buffett. And Buffett could also, see the potential that Ajit had, that integrity that he had, that he himself could help mentor. And I don't know if you've heard that, Ajit and Warren, on the phone at night, practically every day. And we might talk about a little bit later, that mentor-apprentice relationship and how it's necessary to become a fanatic ourselves. But let me give you a few other examples of other fanatics, trying to find and partner with other people. And so, for instance, in our recent book, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants, we have John Malone, known as the Cable Cowboy, written in Outsiders to be one of the top capital allocators. I think his returns have been like 30% compounded annually, at least with TCI, his first organization. That was for many decades. And then Liberty, he's done fantastic with that. But throughout all of those decades, Malone has partnered with, say, like 40 intelligent fanatics. And one of them is an individual we highlight in our second book, Bob Johnson, who started and ran BET, Black Entertainment Television. And the thing, Bob Johnson, he didn't have any experience in running and operating a television channel. No, he was a lawyer. He was a lobbyist for the cable companies. He had a little bit of idea of, the entrepreneurial landscape, but Malone, who was the chair of that department, he saw Johnson. He knew, he could sense that Johnson had the same standards that Malone had. And so he just naturally gravitated towards him. And when Bob Johnson came with an idea to start BET, John Malone immediately gave him $500,000 investment, because he had the idea that Malone wanted to execute on, and Bob Johnson was just the right guy to do it. I'll give you one last example, Nick. We have SoftBank. It's run by Masayoshi Son, and I think this is a great example. He started a software company. He did really good job, but he came from nothing. But he had that huge drive, that huge execution that we see with Intelligent Fanatics. So, of course, when he's older, he meets Jack Ma, who has maybe 30 or 40 employees and practically no business plan. They didn't really even have Alibaba set up yet, and really any revenues coming into that business. But Masayoshi-san writes a check for $20 million to Jack Ma, and it's gone to be like a ridiculously great investment. And what did Masayoshi-san see in Jack Ma? Well, he saw the fire in his eyes. He saw himself in Jack Ma, because there was another individual who gave Masayoshi-san an opportunity, and he just gave that to Jack Ma. So it's, again, if we raise our own standards, become intelligent fanatics ourselves, it's our belief that we will just naturally gravitate towards those with potential to become fanatics.
Let's really dig into this notion that you don't have to have relevant business experience to be an intelligent fanatic. So that's something that was in your book, Sold Price, other than FedMart, which I guess you could say was his first intelligent fanatic experience. He didn't have experience before he started Price Club. And there's all kinds of other examples like that. The 3G guys didn't have too much experience before they started their first bank. They didn't have brewer experience before they bought their first brewer. There's all sorts of examples like that in your book. So how do you think about the importance of experience versus, say, nature or temperament when you study people who are intelligent fanatics today early on in their careers?
I think you brought up a very good point, Nick, and that is a lot of intelligent fanatics do not have any experience in the field that they are going to disrupt. And there, like you said, there's many different examples that we could list. And it really, I think, comes down to the human natural tendency for individuals with experience to be jaded, to look at the business or industry through a certain lens. And if you look through that common lens, that you start to see things too similar to everybody else, and it's hard to get out of it, and it's hard to make your own path. So, lead your own path and then have everybody else follow you. It's hard to do that when you're established or entrenched in some certain idea or ideal. But we see these intelligent fanatics coming from different areas, and then they create, totally different, unique industries. And they do it because they just don't even know what's the established industry norm. And I think it's that fresh set of eyes that really can raise the level and new unique direction and disruption in any kind of industry. So it's those new eyes, and there's many different other examples of, say, inventions coming and disrupting any industry, and that's come from people with no experience. They're not entrenched by the old way of thinking. And I think it also can come back to science and how a lot of the big discoveries can come from and have come from those younger individuals. And so I'll butcher this because I haven't fully internalized this, but I remember Charlie Munger saying that it's sort of like an egg, a human egg inside of a woman, and then there's a sperm. Once there's one sperm that gets inside that egg, then, no other sperm can come and enter the egg. And so it's the same thing with the human mind. If we have a certain idea implanted into it, it's really hard for another idea to come in. So those younger individuals can see with fresh eyes and develop new technologies, ideas, and the such.
Do you have any notable examples of an intelligent fanatic who came into a new industry with these fresh eyes you're speaking about and just did something that everyone else thought was impossible? I'm sure you have tons of examples of this, but are there any of them that stand out in particular?
So we have one example. There's II Cummins we write about in our second book, and he was a young gentleman who had a little bit of tinkering competencies. He liked to play around and fix things, but back in the early 1900s, it was just common for newly invented cars to be, really expensive. So the rich were the only ones able to afford these luxuries. And so what was common then was to hire a handyman and a chauffeur, but they would be the same individual. And so II Cummins, who has, really no experience. I don't even think he finished high school. He becomes a limousine driver for a wealthy family named the Irwin family. And he eventually starts to tinker around and develop diesel engines, a new form of diesel engine. And he applies it in a, 9th, 10th, 11th hour desperation, because they started a business and it wasn't doing too well. Of course, it was the depression that was just starting to happen. And what he does, he puts it into an automobile. It was absolutely unheard of for somebody to put a huge diesel engine into a car. But he did. He's a young kid. He doesn't know any better, and he wants to, really help the little teeny business that they were running. And eventually he puts it in. He drives to Joseph W.G. Irwin's house, and of course they thought their company was going to bottom out at that point in time. And he drives there, and he drives Irwin around, and eventually they go back, and Irwin's just really unhappy. And Classy mentions, I just spent $6,000 of our company on this limousine. And the guy's even more frustrated. Why would you waste all of our money? We're going to be bankrupt any time. But he's like, well, wait, I put one of our diesel engines into this car. And it's like, what? It actually worked? And it's just amazing. So many people back in those days could not see, automobile driven by any other means other than a gasoline-powered engine. But Classy did it. And he was a chauffeur driver. So that's just one example. There's of course many different other examples that I can give. There's other questions that we can probably get to.
These guys are clearly different thinkers, these intelligent fanatics. And in your first book, one of the recurring themes that they applied their unique way of thinking to was incentive systems. So, these intelligence fanatics consistently found ways to motivate employees that made them think like owners instead of employees. I have two questions here, and I guess the first one is, do you have any notable examples of incentive systems that you think are useful for helping people to identify intelligent fanatics today?
Well, I think it just comes down to what are just we might not even have to think of any specific incentives. We just have to think of a general. If we can get a team that can be incentivized and aligned all together to meet short-term goals that help propel the business, then we should be able to have an incentive system that should be working out in the long term. So, for example, we have Les Schwab Tire Centers that was run by Les Schwab in Oregon, and what he did was he set up a partnership system or an incentive system where the owners of these tiny stores, they're not really owners, but they were managers, but they were incentivized as owners to always be mindful about running their operation as if they were the owner themselves, and also the individuals in their team, and they have to be incentivized and aligned all together. And then of course over time they've grown into a massive retail footprint throughout the United States, and they've done fantastically well. And other fanatics, they figure out what is absolutely necessary for their operation and how to glue their team together to be aligned and then reach goals together. Because I think that's a main point we see with fanatics of business, fanatics of, say, military leaders, is how can we align a team together to get extraordinary results? Because I think a team that's cohesive can get extraordinary results, and it's much better than having a team of independent like talented individuals who are totally not cohesive. And I think that's a really quality thing to look at. But of course it differs from one case to another.
My second question about incentives is about finding intelligent fanatics today. So a lot of these unique incentive systems, like the Les Schwab example you shared, are shared later on because the intelligent fanatic in question does interviews or writes books or shares publicly how he used to incentivize employees back in the heyday. So today it's different because not everything's public knowledge. So how do you identify unique incentive systems for intelligent fanatics who are still in the middle of their career today?
So I kind of go back to if we become intelligent fanatics ourselves and we try to align our everyday situations, our everyday business, in ways like the fanatics, trying to create these win-win situations, trying to incentivize, say, relationships with our family to get the most out of them and to, provide those win-wins, then we start to, notice some new incentivized systems. And again, I think the human constant, which I think is nothing different. So we have a business today which might have slightly different economics and business conditions than, say, a company of yore, so Les Schwab, Forbes, or Standard Oil, this, that, or another. While those are slightly different examples, different industries, the constant is the people. So again, I go back to, if we can set up and find those incentivized systems that are aligning the people to be together and to get the most out of each other, then I think those are the ones that will start to, perk our interest.
I thought it would also be interesting to turn back the clock a little bit and discuss why you originally became interested in Intelligent Fanatics and how you met Ian, who co-runs the website and co-authored the books with you.
So Ian Castle, he runs Microcap Club, and I became a member in 2014. And we both, at approximately the same time, and I think later, 2015, read Sanjay Bakshi's 7 case studies on intelligent fanatics of India. And we, of course, have heard Charlie Munger talk about these individuals who are so talented that they could do things ordinary skilled mortals can't. And so we started both independently thinking, this is an interesting area of study. And so I started to look into John H. Patterson and a few others and started writing up something. I sent it to Ian, just cause, see what he thought he'd say. And then we started to collaborate, and it's really snowballed from there, and we've really started to lean into focusing on how these fanatics do what they do. But again, how do we become fanatics so we can raise our own level to, have that pattern recognition, that mastery to start noticing these individuals early? Because, of course, we're both microcap investors.
It's a nice segue into how you can apply this notion of an intelligent fanatic to the world of investing. So obviously the best time to find an intelligent fanatic is when they're just starting their business and share prices are low. You can get in early. Obviously, the lower the price you pay, the higher your expected return. So how do you, when searching for new investments in the microcap space, I guess I have two questions. How do you go about finding intelligent fanatics today who are still unknown? And secondly, why do you think it's best to focus in the microcap space given the risks associated with investing in small stocks who are often illiquid?
So what we like to think of, I like to think of it as kind of like a forest of redwoods. So you think of a redwood as the tallest tree in the world, right? And so for us, that would be more akin to those large cap companies who are, much later in their phase of growth. And it's pretty obvious. A redwood's a redwood, and you can see it from a mile away. But if you get really close and you're trying to look at those saplings and you're trying to figure out, which one is a redwood? Well, it's not really totally noticeable which one is. And so we want to be getting those huge returns. So we want to get a company starting from, the first stage, and we want to ride it practically the whole way. So again, that sapling to a huge redwood, that's what we want to get. That's the return we want to get. But again, it comes back to that, which one is going to be a huge redwood someday? And that's the really hard thing, because there's no established track record. You can't really go in, cut the DNA, and see, okay, it is what it is. So for us, we focus on those teeny tiny companies who are very early in their stage of growth and try to figure out those intelligent fanatic characteristics, because that tends to be like I said, that constant. The people is the constant. We can't tell, what wave will be the next wave, but the people, if we can find the people with a big enough trackway or road ahead of them, then we think it's a good place to look at. And so take for instance, you might be thinking, well, what's an example? So say, for instance, Jeff Bezos. So we have Amazon today in 2018. Now, Nick, do you know how big it is today? Market cap?
Oh,
you might.
Hundreds of billions. I don't know off the top of my head.
I think it's over 700, something like that. So it's big. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I just looked it up. It's $774 billion.
Thank you very much. So $774 billion. So that's 2018. That's Jeff Bezos and Amazon. But if we go back to 1997, I don't know how big it was then, but it was teeny, 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 tiny. And they were just focusing on books, right?
Yes.
So the constant is Jeff Bezos, right? So the constant is Jeff Bezos. So the organization has changed drastically. So we're now in the later stages of Amazon's growth. Now, I have no clue whether Amazon is in, let's use a baseball analogy, in the bottom of the fourth or the top of the ninth. So I don't know exactly where they are in their stage of growth. And I don't know if anybody can. But I can tell you, and I think with somewhat certainty, that Amazon and Jeff Bezos are not in the bottom of the first. So they're not just starting. So he's established, a strong operational track record, and he's shown that he has the ability to go from, he and his team, I should say, has the ability to go from a small book niche, build it up, and go into practically every other retailing segment and totally dominating. And so the market is pricing that in, and So what I'm trying to get at is I don't think I have any competency in, looking at redwoods, take for instance Amazon, and having the ability to see, oh well, that one has a couple more inches to grow than another redwood. So I think that's why we tend to focus on those teeny small companies and the ones that have a potential for really dominating their niche and then growing outside and riding waves. And I think the one, I'll kind of give you a nice little story I remember reading on Twitter from an acquaintance, and I think this kind of shows the beauty of investing in Intelligent Fanatics. Well, in some cases, some of the errors that can come out. But so take for instance, what's his name? David Rubenstein. So he is the co-founder of Carlyle Group, and one time he mentioned the story of Jeff Bezos when he was getting started, and I'll give you a little background. So Rubenstein, what was it? Carlyle Group owned Baker and Taylor, and they were the owner of the largest bibliography of books in print. And so Bezos went to Baker and Taylor, and he said, "Well, I don't have any money, but I'll offer you 1/3 of Amazon stock for use of the bibliography." And now, of course, in hindsight, we can say, wow, anybody would jump at that. But at that time, nobody had any clue how well Amazon was run, the potential, all that kind of stuff. So the Baker and Taylor salesman said, no, I want cash only. But Rubenstein, who I'd say is an intelligent fanatic, he's really worked hard. He has those high standards. He's a master in private equity. And so he, even back then, long time ago in the mid 90s, before Amazon had their IPO, he went back and he's like, oh, well, you know what? The salesman might not have made the right decision. So he went back to Jeff Bezos, met with him personally, and he said, you know what? I think your company's going to go public and it might be worth 200, 300 million. And so he tried to set up a deal with Jeff Bezos and try to get that 1/3 of equity. But Bezos said, nah, I don't need Baker and Taylor as much. I do now. And so he said, you know what? Instead of 33%, I'll give you 1%. And so Rubenstein actually had 1% of Amazon, held it until their IPO, and of course he sold it then. But that 1% would be, as you said, roughly around $8 billion today. So you can kind of see these fanatics, they gravitate towards these other fanatics. But, if we look at their mistakes of omission, we can kind of see that, if he really saw the potential of Jeff Bezos and really had committed to him, he could have made a huge return. But of course, so I think it is possible to partner with these individuals who are so talented that other people, can't do, but we just have to be able to rise our own standards.
Interesting. So I'm a quant. We do quantitative dividend investing and research at Share Dividend, and
yep,
there's plenty of market participants who believe that all the quantitative information in the market is pretty much baked in, but there's definitely, and no one will ever convince me otherwise of this, there is definitely an ability to exploit pricing differentials when it comes to the qualitative, because computers can't deal with the qualitative in the same way that they can quantify stuff. So that is very related to what you guys do, but I want to relate it to the quantitative stuff that I'm more familiar with now by asking you, how do you think about valuation? So for a company like Amazon, it's a great business, but I would say it's probably a bad stock because it's at like 300 times earnings right now. So how much can the leadership of someone like Jeff Bezos offset a valuation that kind of makes me a little sick to the stomach?
Well, again, I go back to that redwood. So what we're looking at is, if we're looking at the established companies, the room for error, even with the established intelligent fanatic like Jeff Bezos, or previously with Steve Jobs, or say with Elon Musk, they're at a later stage. It's much harder to quantify and look at valuation. But even if you look at the tiny companies that we look at, the microcaps, generally they're, the quality companies are going to be at a higher, multiple than any other company. And that's just because there's a scarcity of quality companies to begin with. So you just have to be, and we think it like this, we have to be comfortable paying an okay price. But we think if it's a tiny company, there's a huge runway, and there's a quality intelligent fanatic and a quality team. I have to make that clear. Quality team and quality culture. Then there's a better chance that paying, say a 15, 20 times multiple on earnings, or even, if it might not even be profitable, it might be close to being profitable, paying a decent multiple of revenues, you shouldn't have that much error, or there's less room for error than if you're trying to invest into intelligent fanatic way later on in their company's growth. So that's how we have to be comfortable paying okay price, even what might seem a high price for these early, what we think as intelligent fanatics running quality companies.
So 15 to 20 times earnings is definitely not crazy in the term, like when you think about large cap or mega cap public equities, but how would that compare to, I guess, the average valuation of the micro cap space where you guys tend to live?
Well, and I'll just note that 15 to 20 times isn't really, and then again, looking at valuation, it's really hard. And it changes from one case to the next. But again, like I said, there will be, and it's a common theme for the quality companies that we tend to look at to be priced higher than others based on, multiple of earnings. So I can leave that at that. So, but again, the valuation is based on, say, trailing 12 months. It's not really that big of a huge part of how I would see investing in microcaps. It's mainly what's the potential? What's the potential? Who's leading? And because that's the thing that's really hard to see, is the potential and what niches they can get into. And of course, if you have an intelligent fanatic early and you strap your sidecar to them, you should do fairly well.
Thinking again about, I guess, the differences between a quant strategy and a qualitative strategy. So a lot of what many quants do is, they run stock screens and back tests and those kinds of things. Or if they're kind of more of a special situation cigar butt quant, they'll sit and read 10Ks until their face turns blue, With you guys, what does your research process look like? How do you go about identifying the next individual company that's led by an intelligent fanatic? Do you read 10Ks, or is it more of kind of a primary research, attending conferences and those sorts of things?
Well, I think this is a great question, Nick, because really what we're trying to do, again, we're trying to become that intelligent fanatic. So at least what I'm doing, I'm spending more of my time studying the past, those successes in, industries of the 1900s, the early 1900s and such, and really establishing raising my own standards, that building that pattern recognition. And then, I, of course, attend some investor conferences and try to search through stuff, or Microcap Club is a really good idea generator. But at least right now for me, I'm spending practically all of my time building that competency and seeing how the great leaders have built companies before. That's where I'm spending my time. And I think that's a proper way if we're trying to look at the art of qualitative investing in these intelligent fanatics, is really honing in and internalizing these stories, lessons, and philosophies to the point where it's as if we experience them ourselves, and we do it at a young age. So once we see things and we start getting into working and looking at the companies today, then it just becomes, like I said before, like Wayne Gretzky looking to where the puck is going. We'll have that sense, but it takes so much time, and I have that music background to vouch for this, where I know what it takes to get unconscious competence on guitar. it's a ridiculous amount of work, but there's a process, and I think it's really comes back to that standing on the shoulder of giants and trying to really hone in and master that master-apprentice relationship.
I want to talk more about how you spend your time today. So you run intelligencefanatics.com, and I'm sure you're doing lots of writing and research for that. Could you tell us about the membership program that's on intelligentfanatics.com and what inspired you to do a membership model to I guess, fund your studies of these business leaders?
Sure. So what I decided, at least on the business sense with the books, so we started off with publishing books, and that's not really high margin. Well, it technically is, but it's the growth in that is limited compared to what we could do with memberships. And of course, coming back to that, how do we become intelligent fanatics ourselves? We think that there's a whole system that we can take, and I have that from music, where we're providing the tidbits, the golden nuggets from these intelligent fanatics from any field. We're focusing really on business so far, but we do pretty much any field, and we think that with the right mindset, we can, get all of this information. So that's why we decided the membership, and we continually try to give as much value to members. So we have a membership form so members can collaborate. We provide some unique exclusive material. And then one thing that I personally have been working on, and I think this is something that's truly unique, is I take my 20 years of guitar experience and I've adapted how I've become reached mastery on guitar, and how do we adapt that to the business investing landscape, and how do we truly stand on the shoulder of these giants so we can see further. And so we have an online course that'll be available free for members who sign up, and that should be coming out fairly soon. But it's me providing many examples of intelligent fanatics from many fields. I give examples a lot in music, and I provide examples in music, and then, of course, giving those adaptations into how we can apply these methods in business and investing and any other craft, and really truly internalize. And I think that's the main thing, internalize these stories, lessons, and philosophies to where we build that unconscious competence.
One of the most interesting aspects to me of the membership model is the network effect. So obviously the more members you have, the more valuable the membership becomes. And I'm curious if you have any anecdotes or data on how, whether there's been any fruitful relationships that has fostered as a result of the Intelligent Fanatics website. I guess, what's your take on that?
Oh yeah. It's definitely, we're working towards that network effect. That's why we started and continually price our offering at a ridiculously low price, and comparison to what value that we provide. So we're trying to build that network of individuals, and we have some really interesting connections that we've been able to build through the membership, and it's just gonna multiply from there. Have that flywheel effect. So we're looking forward, and I don't know if listeners are familiar, but we have a following in India, and so we're kind of leaning in towards there. We hired 2 analysts to help us kind of uncover intelligent fanatics in India, so we can learn and study on, and also just really, again, build that network of individuals to provide more value to ourselves, to our members, and really help each other stand on the shoulders of these giants to really see further.
So I've read on your website that one of the reasons you guys focused on India was because it turned out that there was a huge proportion of your audience was reading from India, members or readers. I can't quite remember, but I'm curious, are there any other aspects of India as a country that have encouraged you to focus on it geographically?
Oh yeah. So I'd say India is, of course, they're a developing country. We kind of see it as the USA, like in the early 1900s. So there's a lot of really interesting things happening over there that aren't here, and that provide us with lessons we can take directly from these fanatics. So it's say kind of the equivalent of, being able to meet, say, like Henry Ford and, chat with him. So we're really trying to go directly to these fanatics for this wisdom and driving these things to learn from. So it's sort of like that. And there's a demographic. Their demographic is growing quite significantly. So there's a lot of really interesting things about India and why we think, it's necessary to really lean into this area.
For me personally, if I had to do due diligence on companies or management, or I guess intelligent fanatics in India, I would be pretty lost myself. So
yeah, that's the same thing with us. That's why we brought on Indian analysts to help us out.
Yeah, so I mean that's exactly where I'm going. I'm curious how you found your 2 research analysts in India.
So we provided a kind of like a search for these. It was initially for one position, but we actually found 2 people that were exactly what we needed and kind of have 2 different backgrounds. One has more of a investing background. He's a full-time investor, and the other has a journalist background. And so we think we had them create a case study, all of our applicants, and these ones stood out to us, and we're really, really looking forward to working with them. They're top-level individuals, and they're masters of their Indian industry and the journalism trade. So like I said, we're really excited.
I wanted to wrap up by asking you a few targeted questions about Intelligent Fanatics today, and I guess in the future for people who are considering investing in companies run by Intelligent Fanatics. So the first one I have is, I guess, what is the appropriate action when an intelligent fanatic that you've already identified leaves the business they founded?
You have to be careful. You have to make sure that the culture is highly intact and it's really, really, really tight. They have a system of hiring individuals through the company, and they have a deep bench of talent. If they don't have those things, you better run. You got to sell your position, rethink your partnership with that company, because I think it's really important. If the culture isn't highly intact, again, that team there, because it's the team is the one executing, it's the intelligent fanatics that's leading them, so both are highly important. If the intelligent fanatic leaves and there's not that great of a culture there, then better start running real quick.
Earlier in this conversation, you identified Warren Buffett as an intelligent fanatic. What's your take on Berkshire after Buffett?
That is a great question, Nick. And so what I could say with that is that really I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But I think the departure of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger is going to be a huge blow to the company. And I have total immense respect for whoever is truly running the business after they are gone, and the others involved. But I personally, this is my opinion, and others might be seeing it differently, but I think Warren Buffett himself is truly one of the best business managers and investors of our time. I think he's really, really, really rare, and I think his born talents and his fanaticism and his ability to overcome his weaknesses is really rare. And then you have Charlie Munger, who's partner, and then you have, like a great duo. And so when they're gone, there's going to be a huge void. And I can just let me give you a little example. Some people might say, like, well, why is he so unique, and, why is he so rare, in my opinion? Well, I think Buffett is the equivalent of an autistic savant who's been able to get over his weaknesses. And so I'll give a musical example. There's an individual, he's probably in his mid to late 30s. He was born blind. He's an autistic savant, and he plays piano. Now, this guy is absolutely rare. He's like Mozart. He has the ability to hear a song once, and he can play the song back perfectly without practice. Now, you might be thinking, wow, well, from a music musician standpoint, that's really, like, nobody can do that. It doesn't matter how much you practice. Having the ability to store and recount a song perfectly from your mind 10 later is really 1 in a billion, 2 in a billion rare. There's very, 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 very few people who can do that. But I see Warren Buffett. He's an intelligent fanatic. He's read all these books, but he has a mind that is eidetic. Eidetic meaning he can store and recount practically an unlimited number of data points. So what he reads is practically, absorbed 100%, 90, 95, 100%. He's sort of like Rain Man. Some people might have seen that movie, and it's based on an individual who's an autistic savant. His name was Kim Peek, and he could read, whatever he read, a dictionary, a phone book, everything he read, he could not forget. He would recall it perfectly. And I think Warren Buffett is close to that, or if not that. And so having that ability with the intelligent fanaticism that he has, and his reading and his studies and, who he's been meeting. But he's really rare because he can get past his weaknesses. So he might have been weird and awkward to begin with, but he, took a Dale Carnegie course, and he really worked on speaking and getting over some of his weaknesses. But say like Mozart or Derek Pervincini, they weren't able to get over their weaknesses, in speaking and interacting with other humans. So they never really reached their fullest potential because they couldn't get past their weaknesses. But Buffett, he could, and he has. So I think that once Charlie and Warren are gone, it's going to be difficult for them to maintain extraordinary returns. And of course, it's just a much bigger company with more capital, so it's going to be more difficult.
I want to ask you a similar question for 2 other companies with obviously 2 different leaders as well. What are your thoughts on Amazon after Jeff Bezos?
He's much younger, so you don't really have to worry about it. But yeah, I think he's different in the sense that there's a few win-lose situations, say with taxing and all that kind of stuff that might hurt them in the meantime. But I think, once he leaves, they have a strong culture too, but it's still difficult. He's kind of similar to Buffett, where, say like Elon Musk. Those 3, they have a different kind of mind, and something you really can't learn or teach. Those guys are, truly unique, intelligent fanatics. And once they're gone, it's going to be a little bit more difficult.
And my last question for you is this. What are some examples of relatively unknown intelligent fanatics today?
Well, I just leave it at this. Again, I'm still trying to become an intelligent fanatic myself. I'm trying to raise my own standards. I still am not there. And so for me to say I know with absolute certainty that somebody else is an intelligent fanatic early in their company's growth, I can't really say that. But of course, I'm trying to work on that. There's unique companies. There's one company, the case study that was written up for our one of our positions in India. She wrote about a company called Furtados. It's a music store retailer, and even though the intelligent fanatic is gone, he's since passed a number of years ago, but for 100 years, they were able to create a really, truly unique company, get amazing results. That's unknown, but we already have that track record to see, and we can learn from that. So that's one that would be unknown, little known. And many of the case studies that we have in our second book, take, for instance, Roger Milliken, he's since passed as well. So we have that track record there to show. But in the textile industry, which is, second to, say, the airline industry and the, the poor capital market, well, not capital markets, but just it's a horrible industry to be operating in. Roger Milliken went from a traditional textile mill, and he built it into a highly specialized textile producer and inventor on the scale of W.L. Gore. And, that's something that that company, Milliken and Company, hasn't been talked about much. And then you have Hank Rowan. He built Inductotherm, again, another case study in our second book, not really well known, but, he was the really interesting philanthropist. He built this great company, and then all of a sudden he gives a tiny public college in New Jersey $100 million gift. And so it's that intelligent fanatic. They do things that other people don't, and they're willing to make those risky bets, but just stray away from the beaten path. But yeah, so there's many cases, I would say, of established intelligent fanatics just that aren't known that I could name off, but intelligent fanatics that are early in their stage right now and that are not well known, I'm still working really hard to getting there and knowing who they are. If you know anybody, Nick, please let me know.
Definitely will do. I said that was my last question. I lied. I have one more. Do you have a favorite intelligent fanatic?
That's a good question. So what I try to do, well, you know what? It's not business, okay? But there's one individual in music. I'm not a fan of this individual's music or their band. I appreciate what they do, but Bono, the singer for U2, I recently finished his autobiography. It's a string of interviews that he did over a number of years in the early 2000s. He is an intelligent fanatic, and not only is he an intelligent fanatic, but he's one of those rare individuals that really understands the lessons and the great ideas from many different modalities, disciplines, and he's the rare band leader who can take a band, these ragtag group of Irish kids from high school, and with the help of their really good manager, Paul McGuinness, they were able to maintain success for many, 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 many decades. And they're now one of the top bands ever. And, he's worth $590 million. It's really rare to see a band staying success that long, continually coming out with great songs and building their audience, but also at the same time not getting into drugs and doing it purposefully, creating great relationships, really working with the business side of music, and really setting up those win-wins. Those are the rare people. Those are the rare intelligent fanatics, and those are the ones that I really like. So it's when I talk about that huge pot of gumbo where you need a bunch of different quality aspects from different intelligent fanatics. Well, you know what? There's some times where you can have one intelligent fanatic who has all the good qualities that you can learn from, and you only really need one or two of those type of people or mentors to study and really internalize. And I say Bono is one of my favorites.
It seems like every one of these interviews I get another book to add to my reading list, and that's certainly one of them. Thanks so much for your time today, Sean. I learned a bunch about intelligent fanatics, and I appreciate your time. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you very much, Nick. I really appreciated it too.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode, everyone. I invite you to check out our website at sureinvesting.co, see our premium investment research at suredividend.com, and also check us out on YouTube, where we publish videos under the name Sure Dividend. See you next time.